In 1881, the Jews welcomed Greek rule in Thessaly, in communities like Trikala, Volos, Arta, etc., but the Greeks always had a sense of revenge toward the Jews because the Jews resisting Greek nationalism, because of the theological divide, because the Jews didn't accept Christianity, they didn't accept Christ as the Messiah. The Greek Orthodox and the Christians accused the Jews of killing Judas, of blood libels, and so blood libels continued. So even though the Jews were devout citizens under Greece, in Thessaly, for example, or in Athens, there were blood libels against them. In Athens, there were blood libels against the Jews in 1847. In Thessaly, there were blood libels against the Jews in 1893. This is 12 years after the Jews had cordially accepted Greek sovereignty. In 1912, when Greece conquered the northern parts of Macedonia, like Salonika, they entered the city, and there were riots. The soldiers pillaged the city. They killed Jews. They destroyed synagogues. They took Torah scrolls and they dragged them into the streets. But then you have the Jews of the southern part of Greece wanted a modus vivendi, and it was agreed that under Greek rule, the Jews would only have to go to the army after 3 years. And then in the continuum, the Jews were devout soldiers. In the Albanian campaign, when Italy threatened Greece of attack on October 28th, 1940, the Greek dictator Metaxas said, "Ochi," no. He wouldn't give in to the Italian demands. And the Jews were about a fourth of the fighting force of the Greek army. And at first, we pushed back the Italians into Albania. They attacked from the northwest corner of Greece. And there was one of the architects of pushing back the Italians was a colonel called Mordechai Frazis, and he fell in battle leading his brigade on the 5th of December 1940, and he became a national hero in Greece, and there are monuments for him. And the Jews fought valiantly. In the end, the Nazis took over on the Italian front and the Bulgarian front, but the Jews were also fought for Greece. They also fought for Greece and an independent Greece in the German occupation on the side of the leftist Greek communist Elasayam movement. And the Jews were accepted in the movement, and they were active in a lot of battles. And the head of the Greek Republic, his name was Venizelos. So he was very popular in Greece. But he realized that he had to push the Jews out of the picture electorally. So he created a separate Jewish electoral college for the Jews and the Muslims in Macedonia and Thrace, so they wouldn't vote against him, and this way he could sway the national elections. So for 5 candidacies in the parliament, the Jews had their own parliamentary members, and they could vote for them. They had 5 even. Okay, but this was a point of contempt, of tension. And then in the 1917 fire in Salonika, where 72,000 residents were made refugees, half the city was burned down, 55,000 Jews were refugees, and they didn't get their property back. And they were duped by Venizelos. Venizelos, he was the one that led Greece into war to recreate the Byzantine Empire, what's called the Megali Ide, the great idea, and he attacked Turkey and the Ottoman Empire. In Greece ruled the Ottoman Empire and parts of eastern Thrace for 3 years. The Jews also fought valiantly on his side against the Turks. Okay, but in the end they lost. The Greeks lost. They had to retreat. But the agreement was that there would be a population exchange. Over 1 million Greek Orthodox, Greek-speaking Greeks who never lived in Greece would be resettled in Greece. Then 1 million Muslim Ottoman Turkish or Turkish-speaking Turks who lived in Greece or the Greek peninsula would be transferred to Turkey. So each population, Greece and Turkey, would be left with 100,000 as a minority. So 100,000 Muslims still live in Thrace in Greece, and 100,000 Greeks still live in Istanbul and in Turkey. But what happened was that a hostile Greek Orthodox population from Asia Minor came to Greece, and in particular to Thessaloniki, and it changed the demography of the city. The Jews were a majority until 1922, and then they become a fourth of the population. But this population had instigated over 50 blood libels toward the Jews in the 19th and early 20th century. So they wanted to really ruin Salonican Jewry. So they changed the whole dynamic. The Jews were no longer in charge of the port as port workers or customs workers. It became a Greek port. Okay, and locally, the Greek Orthodox and the refugees and Ponts, a different group, they instigated against the Jews in a daily newspaper called Macedonia, the Macedonian newspaper, and an editor of the newspaper Macedonia named Pharthis accused the Jews of being traitors to Greece. They accused a Jewish boy who was a Maccabi head in Salonika of going to Bulgaria for a Bulgarian nationalist meeting. He went to Bulgaria for a Maccabi regional meeting, but the newspaper accused Yitzhak Cohen of going for a political meeting of the youth wing of a Bulgarian Macedonian nationalist movement who wanted to take over Macedonia and make it Bulgaria. Okay, so there were riots against the Jews in half of Salonika in 1931 in June, and a neighborhood called Campbell of Jewish port workers and fishermen were burned to the ground. Okay, so Venizelos and his movement are part of this, and they accuse the Jews in parliament of being traitors to Greece. So the Jews always supported the monarchy in the elections, as opposed to the Venizelists, who were the Republicans, who believed in a Western European government. You see all the paradoxes. So because now most of Salonika are Christians who hated the Jews, they brought this hate from Asia Minor. During the Holocaust, the local Greeks in Salonika aren't going to save the Jews. There were only 2 families who were rescued or could hide in Salonika, whereas the Greek people, including the partisans, especially on the left, accepted the Jews, and if they went to the partisans, to the mountains, they could be accepted and live there and fight and be a part of the resistance. So in most of the situations, the Greek society protested the deportation of the Jews to Auschwitz and what the Nazis were doing, but there were elements like these Asia Minor refugees in Salonika who opposed the Jews, whereas in the south of Greece, many Jews were protected in villages, in mountains, in monasteries by the Catholic Church, by the Greek Orthodox Church, and in illegal immigration to Palestine. The Greek Orthodox Church helped. Elasayam helped. The Histadrut from Palestine had cooperation with Elasayam. And so the Histadrut would send pharmaceutical items, they'd send boots, army boots for the Greek resistance, and the Greek resistance helped Jews get out of Greece via the Evia Peninsula to Turkey on little fishing boats. So you have all these paradoxes. So it's the harmony and disharmony. And then in the south of Greece, they have maybe 40,000 people who actually helped the Jews survive. And there should be many more righteous Gentiles, but there are only a few hundred.